eyebrows. His clothes were one thing, but why did he have to overreact to everything? No, Ains knew the answer to that. Ains was the creator of Pandora's actor. In other words, his every move and gesture existed because Ains thought they were stylish. Thus, he had happily worked them into the character design. Ugh, this is really... In the past, he had thought of military uniforms as being very cool, and he believed that actors ought to be dramatic, but watching someone as intelligent like him make such showy motions was, "Ewa, how lame." Those quiet words slipped free of Ains' heart, so softly that nobody heard. This was his black history. His living, breathing black history, Pandora's actor. If anyone else in the guild were around to witness this NPC's conversion into an actual person, they would probably be rolling around on the floor, laughing out loud. Well, that was how he felt. He was not pointing fingers at anyone. Forget it, I need to pull myself together. As one of the undead, I don't have time to be shaken by such psychological blows, Ains quietly said to himself as he calmed himself down. You're right. I intend to withdraw greed and generosity, Hygiea's chalice, billion blades, and depiction of mountains and rivers. And what of the other two? Leave them. They're one-use items. The fact that they're so powerful means you have to think about the right time and place to use them. Then, there's also the matter of how to recover the items to use them again. Indeed, it is so. For these legendary treasures, so mighty and potent that they are worthy of being called trump cards, which can make the impossible possible, or even change the face of the entire world, Pandora's actor, I'd like to test your knowledge. There are 200 world-class items, but how many of them are you familiar with? Forgive me, Momonga-sama, but I only know of 11 of them. Ains nodded in acknowledgement. Those were the world-class items which Ains Ulgaun possessed. He did not know that there was one more, Atlas, which had been stolen from them. In other words, he had learned that the NPC's knowledge was affected by their settings, but they could ignore any contradictions in their backstories. Ains had observed the NPCs for several days now. He had learned that the NPCs seemed to take after his former guildmates in the parts of their personalities, which were not covered by their character details, as well as in the interpersonal relationships with other NPCs. For instance, the relationship between Shalltear and Aura, or that between Demiurge and Sabas. Ains smiled, though his expression did not change. So basically, they're like everyone's children. It felt like his friends from the past were by his side once more. It gladdened Ains' heart, but at the same time he felt terribly alone. Ains shook his head to disperse his hurt feelings. Is that so, Pandora's actor? I seem to have asked you a pointless question. Certainly not. I must tender my sincerest apologies for my lack of knowledge. With that he bowed. Every move he made was exaggerated to the point of being ridiculous. Never mind. I will be heading to the mausoleum soon. Has anything happened here? Of course not. Everything within this domain is the sole property of yourself and all your colleagues, Momonga-sama. How could anything happen? With a theatrical flourish, he gestured all around him. Although, it is with a heavy heart that I confess that I was hoping you intended to make use of my abilities, Momonga-sama. Ains paused and began sizing up this heteromorphic creature. He was right, at one point Ains had indeed intended to make use of him. Pandora's actor possessed wit and cunning that ranked among the pinnacle of Nazaryk's denizens. While he usually applied said intelligence towards strange purposes, it was very difficult to cast aside his wisdom during times of great need. In addition, Pandora's actor possessed very flexible abilities, to the point where he could replace all the other guardians. However, Ains had not made him for combat or administrative duties, but to preserve the forms of Ains Ulgaun and the memories of his comrades. You are my final ace in the hole, so I do not intend to use you for petty tasks. I am truly grateful for that. With a look on his face which suggested that he was hesitant to speak, probably, Pandora's actor once more took a deep bow. Understood. Then, I shall continue to manage the treasury from now on. Make me proud. Also, from now onwards, call me Ains Ulgaun. Oh. I hear and obey, my creator, Ains-sama. After Pandora's actor saluted him, Ains turned away, as if to show that the conversation was over. Just then, a voice came from behind him. However, Ains-sama, though this might offend you, I submit that since a situation has arisen that requires the use of world-class items, it might be better for you to permit me to leave the treasury and move around on other floors. He had a point there. Pandora's actor was a treasure, but it would be foolish to lose more important treasures, because all he did was display him rather than use him. Now was the time to deploy of him, given that this was an emergency situation, and he also had to move the treasury's gold to the throne room. After making his decision, Ains turned around, just in time to see Pandora's actor placing a hand on his chest, as if to recommend himself. Ains also heard a quiet yuwa from the otherwise expressionless Shizu. That sound carved a grievous wound into Ains' soul, although his emotional suppression immediately calmed him down. Pandora's actor was indeed far too dramatic, and it made his creator, Ains, think that every single movement he made was designed to scream "I am cool." Perhaps such actions would fit him if he was a handsome man, but instead he was an egghead, which made them terribly unfitting. It even made Ains feel uneasy when he saw him. Ains quietly studied Pandora's actor for a while, and then he plucked a ring from his pocket dimension and tossed it to him. The ring traced an arc through the air, landing neatly in the hand of Pandora's actor. This is the ring of Ains Ulgaun, and it possesses the ability to. Ains held up a hand, as though to tell Pandora's actor not to go on. Although he seemed quite disappointed, Ains decided to pay him no heed. This is just in case. Albedo, inform the vassals of Nazarick about Pandora's actor. Before that, you are only to travel between the throne room and the treasury, Pandora's actor. Understood. The two of them responded at the same time, but Pandora's actor clicked his heels together with great force, tossing out his arm which was straightened all the way to the tips of his fingers and saluted with great pomp and circumstance, or to put it less kindly, he was hamming it up. Ains looked at his egghead, and gently shook his head. He was not a bad sort, and he was quite capable, but regretfully, Yuwa, why did I design him with such a personality? I used to think this sort of thing was so cool. No, actually, I still think his uniform is kind of cool. If Ains could have blushed, his face would be bright red. Oi, Pandora's actor. Ains grabbed Pandora's actor by the shoulders and pulled him aside, as if to say, come with me. Of course, he told Albedo and the maids to stay where they were. I have an important question for you. I am your creator, and the one you are loyal to, right? Indubitably so, Ains-sama. For as I was made by you, if you desire me to do battle with the other supreme beings, I shall charge into the fray without hesitation. I see then, I have a request for you as a human being, no, a man, no, as your creator. Could you please not salute anymore? Pandora's actor locked his vacant eyes with Ains' own, his confusion at Ains' words evident within them. How shall I put it, your saluting is pretty weird, so please don't salute anymore. As for your uniform, it makes you look very strong, so we'll leave that be, but please, really, don't salute anymore. When es means God's will. TL note, if this is my God's will. Is that German? Don't speak like that either. No, you may use it if you please, but just not in front of me. I'm begging you. Why yes. This was the first time Pandora's actor had such a look of shock on his face, and his answer seemed a little strange. After realizing their faces were close enough for a kiss, Ains backed off and asked weakly, please, I'm begging you. I didn't think my emotion override would trigger over something like this. It's worse than riding a giant hamster. I can hardly believe it myself. Although I'd like to discuss the matter in greater detail, the situation is quite urgent, so we'll leave it at this for now. Diamond suit then, there's something which has to be done before entering the mausoleum. Albedo, leave the ring of Ains Ulgaun which I gave you with Pandora's actor. Ains explained the reason for that to a confused Albedo. This is the final trap placed here. The avatars within are programmed to attack anyone with a ring, even if that person is you or me. I see intruders would use the ring to get here. Thus, they would trigger that final trap. Evil, don't you think? Of course not. Albedo reluctantly plucked the ring from her left ring finger, folding it into a silk handkerchief before handing it to Pandora's actor. As he saw this, Ains removed his ring as well, and placed it into a box that he had produced from thin air. Ah! Ains exclaimed. He seemed to have thought of something. He placed the ring with the box which contained all the other rings that he had not yet decided to gift to people. This was because he would still be considered to have the ring on even if it were in his pocket dimension, which would result in the avatars attacking him if he entered the mausoleum. Albedo-sama, could you please let go? As he heard that vaguely annoyed voice, Ains turned to see Albedo and Pandora's actor playing tug-of-war with the silk handkerchief. My precious. Ains-sama said so, didn't he? If you wear the ring, you'll be attacked. It's just taking it off for a while. What are you saying? This is the ring which Ains-sama gave me. How could I? Albedo, there's no time for this. If you're unwilling to leave it with him, then I shall. My apologies, I'm ready now. Albedo suddenly let go, making Pandora's actor lose his balance and stumble back with a cry. Is that so? Then enter. Pandora's actor, you will direct Yuri and Shizu to move some of the treasure to the throne room. Though it might be troublesome, be considerate of Albedo, and do not use her ring. Instead, use the one I gave you. Thank you very much, Ains-sama. I cannot bear the thought of others using the ring that you personally gifted to me. But, of course, since this is an emergency, it is not that I am truly unwilling. I just wish to let you know how much I value that ring, Ains-sama, although I am sure that you already know that even without the need for me to understood. Then, who shall stay here and receive Ains-sama when he returns? A look that ill-fitted an elegant beauty crossed Albedo's face as Pandora's actor interrupted her self-promotion. Ains decided to look away from Albedo in that state, so as not to mar the image of the beautiful maiden in his mind. We should be some time. I will notify you with a message, and you can return to us then. After all, we cannot leave this place without a ring. Understood. Ains and Albedo entered the mausoleum, under the eyes of Pandora's actor and the two maids. This dimly lit place was deathly silent, and it seemed like a suitable place for the spirits of the departed to rest. Ains felt somewhat guilty about breaking the silence here, but nevertheless, he opened his mouth and asked the person traveling beside him, "That's right, Albedo, what do you know about world-class items?" From what I can tell, they are the most valuable treasures that the Supreme Beings have collected. They are deeply cherished and one of them is in my possession, but that is all. I see. Then, on some other day, I shall commit what I know about the world-class items to paper. It will be safer to let more people know about that information. Before that, however, I shall inform you about these dangerous items. Ains began talking about them as he walked. Diamond suit, world-class items. These items were closely linked to the game world of Yggdrasil. The world tree Yggdrasil had countless leaves, but then a gigantic monster appeared which devoured these leaves, causing them to fall one after the other, until only 9 were left. These 9 leaves were the previous incarnations of the 9 worlds: Asgard, Alfheim, Vanaheim, Nidavellir, Midgard, Jotunheim, Niflheim, Helheim, and Muspelheim. However, that leaf-eating monster continued its advance on those 9 remaining leaves. This was the backstory upon which the players adventured into unknown worlds in order to protect their own world. What did those world-class items represent? They were equivalent to those other leaves. In other words, a single world-class item represented a world. Thus, the basic design principle of world-class items was that they possessed enormous power, and indeed, many world-class items were extremely powerful. Many players had even expressed the opinion that these items were too imbalanced, but the developers simply replied, the possibilities of the world are not that small, and showed no intention of changing these balance breakers. The developers seemed to have a soft spot for the word world, and so any class or monster with world in its name was usually much stronger than normal. To the developers, the incredibly powerful last boss of the main campaign storyline, known as the World Eater, was the signature world-class enemy. In addition, only the winners of a tournament held in each world could become a world champion. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. Just as Ains got to that part, the two of them arrived at two neatly flanking rows of niches, each filled with a statue dressed in battle gear. This place resembled the Lemegeton, down to its magic arrays and the mood in the air. However, while the demons of the Lemegeton were not armed, all the statues here sported incredibly powerful gear, and their potency rivaled Ain's primary battle equipment. Ai Ains Sama, are these statues made in imitation of the supreme beings? So you noticed. That's right, the Avataras are statues made in the image of my former comrades. Still, while you can tell they're very strong, they look ugly, don't they? I don't think I managed to capture even 10% of their coolness. As one who was created by the supreme beings, there is no way I could not notice. Is that so? Yes, just so. However, Ains Sama, from the name of this place, and these statues, could it be that the other supreme beings have passed away? That is not exactly correct. No, perhaps that was the right answer. Ains halted in his tracks, and quietly looked over the statues as that thought ran through his head. Albedo had no idea what to make of Ains' silence, and a look of unease spread over her face. No man could possibly be unmoved by a sad look on a world-class beauty like her. In addition, she was the loving handiwork of one of his past comrades. Though Ains was undead, his heart still filled up with guilt and anxiety. However, Ains had never had a girlfriend, or even friends in real life, so he had no idea what he could say to comfort her or show sympathy. Panicking, Ains looked desperately around, trying to think of something to say. Just then, Ains noticed something, and he reflexively spoke. You see those 4 empty spaces? After making sure that Albedo's eyes were turned in that direction, Ains explained why there were no statues in there. I shall put my own Avatara in one of these niches. Of course not. The fact was, Ains was the one who had built and placed the Avataras. Because of that, if Ains left the game, there would be nobody to put Ains' Avatara there for him, given that nobody else remained in the guild. His guild members had said, "You can have them," and then left the game after transferring their equipment and cash items to him. Ains had then used cash items of his own to make these golems, in order to put their equipment to use, and to serve as a memorial for his friends who had left the game. This was also why the Avataras looked so ugly. When making Pandora's actor, Ains had the visual data of his guild members on hand, but Ains did not possess the ability or skills needed to make a character which could look like the guild members from scratch. Thus, he used purchased visual data and installed it into a golem's body. The result was these nightmarish monsters, whose limbs were too long or too short, or whose heads were overly enlarged. However, that mismatched hideousness lent them a sinister air and induced intense unease in people. Therefore, from the point of view of making a set of final guardians, Ains considered them to have turned out surprisingly well. How should I say this? They look like puppets I made when I was a kid. It's kind of embarrassing. Besides embarrassment, however, there was another emotion which Ains felt. That was loneliness. When his comrades left the game one after the other, Ains made the Avataras to store their equipment. Those friends of his who had not left the game had once asked him why he had made the Avataras, and this was how he had answered. He might need to use them as a final defensive line of guardians. However, as the number of members steadily decreased, the motivation behind the creation of the Avataras was simply because he was lonely. After all, he had fewer and fewer friends who could play the game with him. He had made the Avataras to symbolize the struggles he and his friends had shared in the great underground tomb of Nazarick, and to compensate for their absence. This was also the reason why this place was called the mausoleum. Initially, it was known as the innermost sanctum of the treasury. But Ains had changed its name in memory of those friends who had left, or rather, vanished from, Yggdrasil, and turned this place into a resting place for his comrades. That said, I still want to believe that my friends were brought here as well. For all I know, everyone might be in some corner of this world. Just as Ains sank into deep thought, a pained cry echoed through the passage. Please do not say that. The loneliness he had felt vanished in an instant, and as Ains hurriedly turned to look at Albedo, an even more powerful sense of surprise assaulted him. Albedo's eyes brimmed with tears, and it seemed like they would flow freely if she just blinked a little. Ains Sama. Our merciful, compassionate Master Ains Sama, the only one of the supreme beings who stayed with us to the end, the one to whom we owe our ultimate loyalty, please do not say that. It is my sincerest wish that you will be our Lord and Master for all eternity. Albedo fell to her knees before Ains. Her voice was choked as she hoarsely repeated please, please. It sounded like a prayer and a cry of pain, as though she were coughing up blood, at the same time. Ains had never seen anyone plead so earnestly in the course of his entire life. He had not expected his jest to have such an effect on Albedo, and Ains was filled with guilt as he reached down to help up the kneeling Albedo. Forgive me. Had he not once thought that his own friends had abandoned him? Had he not felt despair every day he was alone in the great underground tomb of Nazareth, because nobody else was around? Had he not felt anger from that loneliness? Knowing this misery and bitterness, why had he not understood Albedo's feelings? Why had he subjected Albedo to this pain? After helping her up, Ains saw that Albedo's face was streaked with tears, and her eyes were still moist. Ains produced a handkerchief, and clumsily tried to wipe away her tears. He wanted to apologize again, but in the end he said nothing, for want of suitable words. He lacked experience with interpersonal relationships, and did not know how to comfort her and stop her tears. At her wit's end, the sniffling Albedo pleaded with Ains, Ains Sama, please promise me you will not abandon us and leave. I'm sorry but, Ains could not continue after the but. That was because he had thought of something, but Albedo seemed to have assumed his silence was due to another reason. Why? Why can't you promise me that? Were you planning on abandoning us as well? Why? What has displeased you? All you need to do is explain and I shall correct myself immediately. If you consider me a hindrance, then I shall end my life on the spot. No. Ains shouted. Albedo's shoulders lurched in shock. Please listen to me. First, currently, there is no way to save Shalltear. The mind control in effect on her is most definitely the effect of a world-class item. The only way to protect against the effects of a world-class item is to have a world-class item yourself, or a special class. Ains wiped Albedo's tears away as though she were a child. She sniffled and then asked, So the reason you came here was to withdraw a world-class item? Correct. I wanted the Guardians to have world-class items of their own. The fact is, one could probably undo Shalltear's mind control with a similar world-class item, but I don't know if I should use the world-class items within. What a heartless master I am. To think I would actually value a measly little item over one of my loyal subordinates. That's not true. The world-class items were gathered through the efforts of the supreme beings, and so they are more valuable than we are. Really now? If they were in the game, Ains would agree with her, though part of him would feel otherwise. However, under these circumstances, the fact was that Ains could not bring himself to use these trump cards. Among all the balance-breaking world-class items, there were the 20 items known as the 20. The 20 possessed unparalleled power. There was a famous item among the 20 called Longinus, which could completely delete its target, but the price the user paid for that was to be utterly deleted himself. There was no way to restore the data of anyone deleted by that world-class item, other than by using the resurrection powers of other world-class items. Neither cache items or resurrection spells would work. If someone were to use it on an NPC of Nazareth, it would even reduce the maximum levels of NPCs, which could be created, the special feature of a guild homebase. Ains recalled several other equally insane items. There was a Hura Mazda, which had a potent effect on anything with a negative karma value, and its area of effect could span an entire world. There was 5-element progression, which could request the Yggdrasil developers to change part of the magic system. There was also Ouroboros, which could request a more far-reaching change to the system than 5-element progression. Then, there was the most powerful world-class item, World Savior. Normally it only had the power of an ordinary club, but it could grow in strength without limit. A single enemy with this item could conquer the whole of Nazarick, even at the height of its power with all its members present. The items known as the 20 were so powerful that they would vanish after being used once, which was why he could not bear to use them lightly, but instead treated them as trump cards. Ainz Ulgaun proudly boasted possession of 2 of the 20. They would only be used against enemies of incredible power, because only items of matching power could rival them. In addition, it was one thing if they simply vanished after use. However, what if they fell into someone else's hands after vanishing? What if they fell into the hands of Nazarick's enemies? Nazarick was protected by world-class items, so the interior should not be affected, but if things went poorly, the enemy might be able to lay siege to the entrance. Therefore, he had to find some other way to save Shalltear, without using world-class items. Albedo, I am grateful for your words. I shall now tell you the reason why I was silent just now. His body still felt like the human it had once been. Ainz took a deep breath, like he had while he was alive, because he knew how important the words that came next would be. I intend to challenge Shalltear to a one-on-one battle. Therefore, I am unsure if I can return alive. I understand that we must do battle with Shalltear, because leaving her be is the worst possible option. Ainz nodded in his heart. He did not know why the enemy had not given Shalltear any orders, but once they did, the situation would become dire, because everything about Nazarick might end up being exposed. Still, why must it be a one-on-one fight? Can we not win by numbers? Are we unable to help you? As he wiped away Albedo's freshly shed tears, Ainz answered, It is not that, Albedo. I trust you. It's just that, well, there are 3 reasons. The first is because I doubt my own suitability as your master. How can you say that, Ainz-sama? Ainz raised his hand to interrupt her. Since I considered the possibility of players existing, I should have also thought of the existence of world-class items. Therefore, I wonder if such a slow-thinking person as myself has any value as a ruler, and if I am qualified to lead everyone. Your presence alone is value enough, Ainz-sama. If there is any inadequacy, we will assist you with all our strength. Thank you, but the person most responsible for this incident is myself. If this world truly possessed a Longinus, then it was possible that all the guardians might be eradicated for the price of a villager's life. It was quite bad that Shalltear had been mind-controlled, but when one was aware of that aforementioned danger, they had gotten off remarkably lightly. And so you intend to atone for your sins by fighting Shalltear in single combat, but who could possibly punish you, Ainz-sama, the highest ruler of Nazarick? That's not all. This is the second reason, the fact that Shalltear is alone. It might well be a trap, indeed, it could be a fatal trap. As he saw the puzzled expression on Albedo's face, Ainz continued speaking, We, Ainz Ulgaun, often used PK methods similar to how Shalltear is now. We would use one of our members as bait, and then hunt down any prey who got hooked. Of course, there was a high chance of the bait being killed, but in exchange, we would make sure any enemies who attacked were wiped out. If that's the case, Ainz-sama. Wait a minute, I'm not finished. Do you know what we feared most whenever we set a trap like this? Without waiting for a reply, Ainz proceeded to answer his own question. That would be the number of attackers being less than the number of people used as bait. The less people we hooked, the more we had to worry about enemy ambushers turning the trap against us. After he saw the understanding dawn in Albedo's bloodshot eyes, the unbreathing Ainz exhaled anyway. And the last reason is because Shalltear has to die. In that case, let me go. I am the most suitable for the task, since I have a world-class item of my own. Are you sure you can win? Don't lie to me, tell me your odds of victory. Albedo bit her lip under Ainz's calm gaze. Albedo, you are right. Shalltear is very strong. Shalltear Bloodfallen. She was the strongest guardian of the great underground tomb of Nazarick. Not even Albedo, no, nobody among the other level 100 NPCs was capable of facing her. Because of that, I must be the one. I am the only one who can challenge Shalltear in a one-on-one fight and win. Well, about that, perhaps you could defeat her in your full equipment, but Ains sported a full set of divine class items and all sorts of cash items, while Shalltear only had a single divine class item, her Spiet Lance. Ains had a massive advantage in terms of equipment quality. However, what Albedo had left unsaid was the reason why Ains' chances of victory were slim. Ains was fully aware of that reason as well. It was because Shalltear Bloodfallen was the nemesis of Ains Ulgaun. Ains roleplayed an undead magician, and his character build focused on necromancer-type classes. In other words, his character had been built for entertainment. Shalltear, on the other hand, had been made with an optimized build. In addition, Shalltear's divine magic caster classes could use many spells, which were very effective on the undead, and she was adept at melee combat. These two reasons were bad enough, and on top of that, the necromantic spells Ains favored did not work well on Shalltear. Ains could not use his specialty against Shalltear, and Shalltear had an advantage when fighting the undead. In addition, Ains typically did not equip his best items, because he feared that they would be stolen away. Thus, when they clashed, Ains' chances would be very low. Worse, he might not have a chance at all. So you're saying that the circumstances don't favor me? Ains had the right of it. Albedo lowered her head. That might be the case, Ains agreed. He should not be able to beat Shalltear. Still, you'll see that the title of Supreme Ruler of Nazarick is not for show. There is nothing wrong with your thinking, but it is in error. After all, you only possess the knowledge has been infused into you. What does that mean? How experienced are you? What? Experience? Albedo's face turned bright red in an instant. Yes, combat experience. So that's what you meant. Yes, I can make full use of the strength which the Supreme Beings have given me. So I believe it counts as being very experienced. Ains shook his head to reject Albedo's answer. He had learned a lot when fighting that Clementine woman. That's not right. Being able to wield power and gained experience are completely different things. Do you remember the large-scale invasion of Nazarick? Are you familiar with Shalltear's memories of fighting players? I did not ask in detail, but she said she vaguely remembered being killed once. Besides that? Albedo shook her head to indicate that she did not. Typically, she and I were the ones who handled lone intruders. That stinginess helped quite a lot. That being the case, I should be the one who goes, since I have the highest chances of winning. Ains smiled coldly. Naturally, his face did not move. However, Albedo seemed to have felt the smile of her absolute ruler, and her cheeks turned pink, as though looking upon the man that she adored. Ains made his challenge to a person who was not here. When I was the guild master of Ains Ulgaun, my chances of victory in PvP combat were quite high. Granted, I lost to people who had flawless builds, but how could I be defeated by someone who only relies on high stats? More importantly, I had a close friendship with Peroroncino. This is what they mean by the battle's over before it's begun. Shalltear. Ains Sama, I will no longer try to stop you. However, I want you to promise me that you will return here safely. Ains studied Albedo quietly, and then slowly nodded. I promise you that I will defeat Shalltear and return to this place. Part 2. A vast, emerald green world spread before him. Ains looked around, and then chuckled at his post-teleport reflex to check if anyone was around. If there was anyone that Ains needed to look out for, they would have attacked long ago,